Hi there, and welcome to the latest edition of the QLM YouTube channel, where we try and help folks with some tips and tricks around how to use the QLM sourcing application for their strategic e-sourcing needs. Today I'm going to talk briefly about how a supplier interacts with the QLM system. So I'm going to put my supplier hat on today and walk you through the process from the supplier's perspective. Supplier's interaction with the QLM system starts with receipt of an email, which was originally generated from their customer or their potential customer's QLM sourcing system. The email comes into their inbox with some qualifying information, such as, in this case, the RFQ number, the due date for the RFQ, and then in the body of the email, some text that gives me some instructions about how to respond, etc. But most importantly, I get some attachments on that email. These attachments can be of two types. They can be of standard supporting information for the RFQ, so helping the supplier with information that will improve the quality of their submission on the RFQ. Things like drawings, specifications files, terms and conditions documents, etc. But the most important one we always get is the RFQ document itself. So what we require the supplier to do is to open that document, and it must be opened in Adobe Reader. It will not work if you try and open that file in a browser window or anything other than Adobe Reader itself. The form will not operate properly, and the logic within the form will not allow you to respond to back into the QLM sourcing application. So this is an example of what a form would look like from the supplier side. Once I've opened it in my Adobe Reader, you'll notice there's some header information, addresses, contact information, etc. at the top. And then we have a number of fields that the system is, that the document is looking for me as a supplier to complete. You'll notice there's a legend on the top right where it tells me the mandatory fields, the ones that I have to complete, are indicated in yellow, and the ones that are optional, meaning I can add information if I want to, but it's not required, are shown in blue. When I get down into the body of the form, you'll notice this quote has actually two different part numbers on it. I'm going to enter some basic information here. I'm going to say this is worth 25 cents. I'll pick from the drop down for unit of measure. 25 cents each. I'll say this is going to take a week of lead time, and I'm going to say that there are no exceptions on this particular line item. You'll notice as I hover my mouse over a certain field, I do get some help along with the field. So if I'm a supplier and I'm not sure what the customer is asking for in a certain field, very probably they've added information to communicate their requirements to me through that, what we call Tooltip Help, which appears over every significant field simply by hovering over that field on the form. We can also have dependency fields or fields that work together. In this case, I might check a no quote, and when I do that, the system opens another field which was not visible before, which is asking me for a reason as to why I'm choosing to no quote that line item. And I can put whatever I want in there, but you'll notice it is a mandatory field, and it is requiring that I put something in that field to respond back. If I do want to add additional supporting documentation, perhaps a drawing of my own part, any additional background information that I need to apply, I can do that simply by attaching a file. So very simple, click on that action button and choose a file from whatever directory I'm looking for, and that now becomes part of my submission. I can do as many of those attachments as I like as a supplier about to make a submission. When I am ready to make my submission, rather than going back to the original email which I had received from my customer and responding to that email, I don't do that. What I do is I stay within the form and I click on the action button to submit my quote response. Now I've purposely left one of the fields empty to show you that if I do that and any one of those mandatory fields is empty, the system is actually going to stop, and it's not going to allow me to make that submission until I've completed any and all of the mandatory fields that have been left empty. So I'm going to just fill in my name if I knew how to type. And once I do that, I get to click to submit the quote. I can see the process taking place in the background. The form is actually doing a direct connect back into the QLM Sourcing database, and I immediately receive a successful submission form that tells me my submission has been sent and received successfully back into my customer's QLM sourcing system. So this is the first indication that my response was successful. The second will be momentarily I will receive an email back from the customer's system indicating that, that my response has been received. And so the first email I got looked like this, which was the please respond to RFQ 257 with the attachments, etc. And as I just hear the email come in, if I now go back to my inbox, I've received a confirmation email. So you'll notice the header subject line is different. It's now an RFQ confirmation email. I get a confirmation number associated with that. And as part of that email, I do get an attachment, which is my quote confirmation. When I open that, I'll open that in the same window. And you'll notice it shows me all the information that I had entered. Here I did a no quote on this line, and I put 25 cents on this line. So all the information that I provided as part of my submission comes back to me for my validation. So thank you for your quote. It gives me my confirmation number, which I can use to communicate with my buyer if I wanted to talk about response time, etc. With them, I have a document number that I can refer back to. Most importantly, though, what I can do here is I can validate my entry. So, for example, I might look at this and say, wow, I just quoted 25 cents when my quote really should have been 250. So I want to correct that. And so rather than going back to my email and trying to contact the supplier, or excuse me, trying to contact my customer and telling them that I've made a mistake, I don't have to do that. All I have to do is go back to the original form. So this was the original form from the original email. I'll just go directly into the cost field. And as I said, I changed it. I had it incorrectly at 25 cents. I wanted it to be 250. And that's all I have to do. And I click to submit. And that now does another submission for me. And what the system does is it will always look at the latest and greatest submission from every supplier. So as a supplier, I can do my submissions as many times as I choose over the life cycle of that RFQ right up until the due date. And if I need to make corrections, or if I find better pricing, or if I find additional elements that I want to add to support my submission, I simply just call up that original form, add the information, change the price, etc., and then do another submission. And that will be reflected in the QLM system on my customer side. In fact, each of those submissions will be reflected individually in the history of that RFQ on my customer side. And so that's really the process. Those RFQ documents that you see, they can be printed, saved, emailed to others, etc. But the most important thing is that when you open the form, you open it properly in Adobe Reader. You complete all the mandatory fields that are presented to you by specific color within the form, and then you use the Submit button within the form to make your submission rather than trying to respond to the email where you got the document in the first place. Hope that helps everybody, and certainly we'd love to hear from anybody with questions or comments. Please feel free to drop us a line at info@qstrat.com, or if you'd rather contact me directly, you have my email and phone number here at the top of this demo form. So we'd love to talk to you more about how we use those forms and collect all kinds of RFQ information from your suppliers or back and forth with your customers. Thanks for listening today, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.